I'm incredibly excited to bring Dr. Glenn Livingston to our Direction Not Perfection community today. Dr. Glenn is a veteran psychologist who is just disillusioned by what traditional psychology had to offer for overweight and or food obsessed individuals. So he's been out carving his own way, and he has a new book released for us today. I'm so excited about this, Defeat Your Cravings. I'm going to nail you down on this one, Glenn. We're going to talk about dramatically reducing impossible to resist cravings, reducing frequency of giving in by 85%, recover faster from mistakes, and think less about food and more about life. Yes, please. Welcome, Glenn.
We can do all those things. We can definitely do that. Nice to be here. Thank you.
I think about that last statement of just think less about food and more about life. And I think I just saw a bunch of listeners' shoulders go, oh, yeah, that would be really nice. How do we do that?
Well, because the thing that drives food thoughts, food obsession, but besides undernutrition and, not reliably, regularly taking care of yourself, the thing that really seems to drive food obsession, in my estimation, is a lack of real clarity of what your food rules actually are. We live in a culture where we're told to eat well 90% of the time and indulge 10% of the time, but we're not told how to distinguish the 10% from the 90%. And so as a consequence, we're always thinking to ourselves, can I do it now? Can I indulge now? Can I indulge now? Can I indulge now? And the food thoughts just never stop coming. Just like a toddler will bug you in a toy store if you don't make it really clear when a toy is available and when a toy is not. But if you say, I don't eat chocolate during the week, I only eat chocolate on Saturdays, this miraculous thing starts happening where you just don't think about chocolate during the week. So you can find tremendous relief by being very decisive and clear about what your target is. And that pre-makes a lot of decisions for you, and it eliminates the need for willpower and the possibility of a food obsession.
I'm loving this because you're already diving. I mean, obviously your background psychology with the mental component of this, the mental game. And do you agree that people don't go to the mental area quick enough? Like they really try to tackle food and fitness, and we forget to come over here and grab, wait a minute, we've got to dig into the mind and what's going on.
Well, I think we're a holistic organism. And I think that there are some very strong psychological components which can either empower or disempower us with our food. So for example, there's a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. If you set a rule for yourself that says, I don't eat chocolate during the week, I'm the kind of person who doesn't have chocolate during the week, and then you hear a little voice in your head that says, you worked out hard enough, you're not going to gain any weight. I know it's Wednesday, but have that chocolate bar along with your coffee. You can start your silly plan tomorrow. That's a justification. Its intention is to prevent you from feeling bad that you're doing something different than what you previously committed to. You were trying to develop an identity of someone who doesn't eat chocolate during the week. And then all of a sudden you are. If you allow that justification, it becomes easy to eat chocolate during the week. So right there is this opportunity to intervene and eliminate those excuses so that it becomes uncomfortable to break your rules. And so, yes, I think that people don't pay attention to the mental aspect of overeating nearly well enough. Yeah.
What you were just describing, do you have individuals come in and say, I feel like I'm self-sabotaging? Because what you just described felt like that. I'm self-sabotaging. I'm saying I want to do one thing. I'm not doing it. Why is this happening?
So I don't think that it's because their mama dropped them on their head or their mama's mama dropped them on their head. I don't think it's because of a deep psychological trauma, although I do think there is such a thing as self-sabotage because of lack of self-esteem and, kind of aggression that gets caught inside of you, anger you're not really dealing with. But I don't think that's the primary cause of overeating. I find that most people, they don't have a really clear target of what they're aiming for. And like my grandfather said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably wind up someplace else. I think that might have been a takeoff on Yogi Berra. But most people don't have a clear target. What does it mean? I really want to eat healthy. I want to stop self-sabotaging. Well, what does that mean? How would you know if you ate healthy today or not? and it's kind of squishy. Like people kind of say, well, I'd have, fish and vegetables and I wouldn't eat bags of potato chips. And well, how many potato chips are you allowed and how many vegetables you need to have over the course of the day? Can you at least have very specific guidelines so you know what you're aiming for? Once you know what you're aiming for, then all of a sudden, all of these self-sabotaging, in quotes, thoughts come into focus. Now you can very specifically address and organize and disempower those thoughts versus just having this vague idea that you don't have self-esteem and you're self-sabotaging. I also, Lindsay, I also think, and this is a lot of what the new book is about, I don't think that the thinking work is enough. I used to think it was enough to find those justifications and eliminate them. But I think there are things like inadequate regularity of nutrition. I think there are things like, not enough social connectedness. I think there are things like not knowing how to take yourself out of a falsely perceived panic state. I think that's what causes people to abandon their best laid plans and overeat and indulge in their cravings. So I think there are a wide variety of things that can create this false sense of emergency in the brain, which makes it more likely that it wants to force us to be less discriminating with food. It's kind of like, oh my God, I don't have what I need. I need calories. Forget all those silly rules. I need calories now. F it, just do it, right? You get a case of the F it's. So I hope I can say that. Can I say F it on your?
You can say F it, yeah.
Okay. I won't go further than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I pull out two of those? Because I could see somebody still lingering on the inaccuracy or infrequency of adequate nutrition, I think is how you stated that. Describe what that is for our listeners in case they just got lost in all the wording.
There's this old nursery rhyme. I think it's Longsworth who wrote it. When she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was hard. I find that most people who are struggling with their cravings, with overeating or binge eating, they tend to be very good dieters until they're not, right? They live on a kind of feast and famine cycle. And I think that if we tell the brain that we live in an environment where food and nutrition is scarce, that it only makes sense that it's going to want to hoard food and nutrition as soon as it's available, right? And so I found with most people, to help them really defeat their cravings and come to a more normalized relationship with food, for a period of several months, not forever, but for several months, they have to abandon intermittent fasting, one meal a day, any kind of extreme dieting in favor of very regular, reliable nutrition. 3 meals a day, check it out with a nutritional expert, check it out with your doctor, go to one of the nutritional calculators online. Make sure you're not trying to lose weight too quickly. You don't want to signal your brain that there's a famine emergency. That's what seems to make it much more difficult for people to overcome overeating and defeat their cravings. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Regular, reliable, spread out for the course of the day.
Thank you. So beautifully stated. And then I don't want to leave the other one of kind of, I'm not going to say this right, but you had said like panic in the brain or like an emotional state that is over exaggerated. Give a real life example of what that looks like.
But besides not having enough food and, waiting until the afternoon or the evening to really try to get your nutrition, maybe you had a crazy day. Maybe everything was coming at you all day long and you couldn't step out of the rat race for even 5 minutes. And because our ability to make good decisions is limited, there are only so many we can make in a day. Without that opportunity to recharge, the brain starts to perceive an emergency and it can't execute the good judgment that you wanted to execute, for your best plans. So that could be a falsely perceived emergency. It could be not having enough water. It could be not getting enough sleep. It could be being too lonely for too long. Like we're pack animals and we're supposed to have a sense of social connectedness. And when people don't attend to that for too long, they're more likely to turn to food for sustenance because the there's an underlying sense of panic that, oh my God, I'm isolated. And 100,000 years ago, it would be pretty hard to survive if we were isolated. So those kind of things.
No, wonderful. I feel like you're describing, and I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but as we dietitians talk about emotional eating, when people think that's like happy, sad eating, and no, it's everything you're talking about. It's the social need, it's the sleep need, it's the stress needs, getting everything else under control so that the food just naturally starts to take that as well. Okay, so let's kind of dig through these one at a time, but dramatically reduce impossible to resist cravings. Where do you start to go with that?
Well, you start with the clear definition of what you want to do it. And by the way, a craving is a sign of brain health. It's not a sign of brain sickness. It's a sign of brain health. Because a lot of people think there's something wrong with them. They have these impossible to resist cravings. 100,000 years ago, when food was not that abundant, we had to be very good at finding it. And so we got ourselves attuned to all these little signals in the environment. Maybe you saw a chimpanzee climb up a tree to bananas, and you recognize that when you saw a chimpanzee, bananas were available. So you got really motivated when you saw a chimp to go have bananas. You'd have banana cravings. In our modern environment, you pass the donut store sign, and that can lead you to donuts and coffee. And so you get all excited when you see the donuts store sign, you get this craving. People think that to eliminate those cravings, that if you stop, like if you just start passing the donut store sign and you don't go in and have the coffee, they think that the craving is going to go right down like this. And they don't really understand what we know scientifically about the extinction curve. The brain doesn't want to give up that easily. So if you stopping at the donut store sign when you pass it, at first you'll get a little relief, but then your brain's going to say, wait a minute, I don't want to give up that calorie source. And it's going to throw a little temper tantrum, and it's going to drive you crazy. Then it's going to start going down, and there are going to be a couple of extra little bursts. If it's a daily habit, somewhere around the 1 month mark, maybe 6 weeks, you're really not going to be bothered by the cravings anymore. The brain is going to label it dormant. So the first thing that you need to do, you need to have a very clear rule. Maybe it says, I'll never have donuts again, or I won't have donuts on the way home from work. Then you need to understand that you're ensuing on an extinction adventure, and you're going to have to ride this out and take it seriously. So what that means is you're going to tell yourself there's nothing wrong with you when the cravings occur. That's your healthy brain doing what it's supposed to do, not wanting to give up on it. You need to prepare for what you're going to do instead. How are you going to redirect your fantasies? When you start thinking about the typical donut and coffee that you're going to get, maybe there's sweet potato and a cup of tea, or maybe there's, some brown rice, or maybe it's some whole fruit or something like that. If you're looking for the energy, you would be better at suggesting what people should have than I would. But you want to redirect your fantasy so that those cravings don't grow up. You don't want to nurture those fantasies. Then you have to avoid getting too cocky once the craving is starting to fall, because you're going to still have a couple of little bursts. And a lot of people, when the craving is starting to go down, they think, oh, I got this. I've conquered this craving already. I could handle a donut or two. And what you need to know about that is that the moment you have a donut, you're resetting the curve again. You're going to have to go through the temper tantrum again. Secondly, that you can't ever totally erase a craving. Your brain doesn't want to give up on something that it learned about how to find food. What you can do is label it dormant, because the brain doesn't want to waste your energy. So if the craving is not rewarded repeatedly, eventually it will stop having temper tantrums and say, okay, you better go look for other things. But the moment that you go have the donut at the donut store again, you're going to get that craving cycle back. So I always tell people, when you break out of prison, don't climb back in to see your friends. Like, just keep going. Yeah.
So I struggle with this a little bit, though. Like, I love it in theory. And then I picture, the client sitting across from me, and that feeling of what, like you're saying, never have something again. And then the word deprived comes to my mind, and I kind of feel like deprivation is something that we're ultimately avoiding. So walk me through, again, just like real life. I mean, you work with real people too.
2 out of 3 people for any given food substance don't have to give it up entirely. The majority of my clients work with what I call conditional rules. So usually it wouldn't be, I'll never have donuts again. It would usually be, I'll only ever have donuts on Saturday, or only when I'm out with my friends. We'll have a very specific set of conditions. The extinction curve works in that direction also, because the conditions that you specify, they become the sign stimulus. They become the conditions under which the donut is available. So your brain won't totally extinguish the donut craving, but it will extinguish the donut craving, during the week when you're just driving home and passing through. 2 out of 3 people are able to do that. They don't have to give it up entirely. And then there's that third person who really has to drop it. Like I can have flour if I really want to have flour. I don't really like it so much anymore. I could have sugar. I don't really like that so much anymore. I prefer to have whole fruit. I can't have chocolate. I lost a war with a chocolate bar in 1982, and I never looked back. So and then the other thing is that it's what Janine Roth says about deprivation. There are 2 types of deprivation. You're never really deciding whether you're going to be deprived or not. You're deciding between the 2 types. So if I do make a rule that I'm only going to have donuts when I'm out with my friends, then I'm going to be deprived of the mouthfeel and taste and texture and energy burst, quick energy burst you're going to get a crash after, that a donut by myself would give me on a Wednesday afternoon. And that's true. I'll always be deprived of that. But if I continue to have donuts during the week, all week long, then I'm going to be deprived of feeling like a tall, thin man who can be a leader with integrity in the world. I'm going to be deprived of being able to hike to the top of mountains with enough time to enjoy them and climb down. You know what I'm saying? Like there's cardiovascular worry. It's not you're going to get this or you're not. It's what are you going to get? Like, what are you going to choose to deprive yourself of in order to get this other thing? And I find that switching that focus really helps people.
Well, and my guess would be when they get to work with you, you actually get to walk them through all of these types of thoughts and how to switch that. Because I don't think individuals naturally do that. No. They go more towards your first example.
Yeah, that's true.
No, thank you. Thank you for answering that. Okay. What about reducing frequency of giving in? So are we kind of already covering that?
We're kind of already covering that when you understand what an overeating episode, when you make it really clear what that is, then you have the opportunity to intervene. And when you attend to all those other elements of self-care that we talk about, that 85% number comes from the statistics that we got. We've had over 2,000 clients, and we tracked our results for the last couple of years. And we find an 85% reduction in the first month of people giving into their cravings and breaking the rules that they set for themselves. So okay. Creating at least one simple rule, coming up with a procedure to pause and examine what's going on at the moment that you're about to indulge, and then learning how to disempower those thoughts, and redirect the energy towards healthier aims.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. And then you had mentioned this too, but very much being clear on, you can say, yes, I did something that I was aiming to do. It always goes back to clear understanding and the insight, right?
That's where it starts.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. Yeah.
I'm loving this recover faster from mistakes, because I feel like in my membership with my powerhouse women, resiliency really feels like the word for us. And it's like, if we can become resilient, then there are mistakes that happen. We're all human. We're going to fall off even when we set those rules. But what's the fastest way back on? And I think that's where you're going with this, is how do we get there quickly?
It has very much to do with forgiving yourself with dignity and collecting evidence of success. So what most people do when they make a mistake is they go, oh my God, I'm pathetic. I'm I'm just a pathetic overeater. I'm doomed to eat like this forever. I'm never going to be able to stick to anything. Look at me. I had, 5 cupcakes and, a whole pizza or whatever they had. And I tell them that it's kind of like accidentally touching a hot stove and then saying, oh my God, I'm a pathetic hot stove toucher. I might as well put my whole hand down on the stove. Right. And you don't do that. You want to experience the pain for a moment because you want it to get your attention so that you can make the necessary adjustments. And then you want to analyze what went wrong, make the adjustments and get up and, aim at the target again and don't touch our stoves anymore. An archery target is a better analogy. You'd say, by how much did I miss the target, in what direction, and what adjustments do I have to make? You want to collect evidence of success rather than failure. See, the questions that we ask ourselves determine the identity that we develop. So if you say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I stop eating? Which is perhaps the question I get more than anything else. Why can't I stop overeating? You're directing your brain to collect evidence that you can't stop overeating. So if you keep asking, why can't I stop overeating? You're going to find answers that say there's something wrong with you. And then you develop a failure identity. If you say, what did I do right and what could I improve? That's a whole different set of evidence you're going to find. You say, well, I had 5 cupcakes instead of 15. In a previous incarnation, I probably would have had 15 cupcakes. How did I do that? How did I manage to stop? Well, I took a breath and I had a salad in between. Or, I just realized that I was all worked up about something at work and I needed to step outside and call a friend or whatever it was. How did you manage to have 5 cupcakes instead of 15? You ate a whole pizza, but did you eat the box? I'm only half kidding. What did you do right? What did you do right? How did you stop yourself? And once you've collected at least some evidence of what you've done right, then go back and ask yourself, what could I improve? What could I do better next time?
Oh, Glenn, this was so good and for so many different reasons. But I always beg of my listeners, take one thing away when you walk away from an episode. If you can't take all the content, which many of us cannot, it's take your one thing. And you just gave me my one thing today is that collecting of evidence versus collecting of failures. And what an easy one-liner for us to really
evidence of success. Yeah.
Yes, evidence of success. Yeah. Yes. So thank you for that. And again, I'm just using this moment to highlight that for our listeners so that if you have not been doing that, write it down, say it, put it somewhere. So when you look back, you can, this time that you're giving to listening to podcasts, there's nuggets of success in there for you everywhere. So make sure you're tracking some of that evidence.
Oh, I wanted to say something that goes along with collecting evidence of success. Yelling at yourself after you made a mistake only serves the purpose to make you feel too weak to resist the next one. Another way of saying that is that it's your reptilian brain's excitement that you kind of got out of the way and let it have what it wanted. It's very difficult to keep overeating if you refuse to keep yelling at yourself. So this is really hard for people because they they think that yelling at themselves is going to make them stop, but it actually makes you continue. You don't want to smack yourself on the head with the spatula. You don't want to keep, torturing yourself after you make a mistake. As soon as you can, figure out what you did right, what caused the problem, how can you improve, and then forgive yourself with dignity and move on. Don't keep yelling at yourself because it's actually reptilian brain motivated.
I was going to say, I guarantee somebody has come back with this of, I get better results when and I'm not saying I'm agreeing with this, but do you get kickback on this of I do better when I come down hard on myself, the carrot versus the stick, that some people really believe they need the stick to stay motivated.
I don't get kickback on that. Usually people go, oh, and then they work hard to do that and they feel, but I don't get kickback on that. No.
Well, that's good. That's motive. Yeah. I love hearing that.
I mean, some people were trained in that way. I used to go to this exercise class, which was taught by a police sergeant. And man, would he kick my butt. And if I didn't show up or if I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And I liked that. I got better results with that. But I knew the guy liked me, and I knew he was, you know, really supporting my confidence and my esteem. That's different than calling yourself names and berating yourself for the mistake that you made. And I find really without fail that if people insist on continuing to torture themselves like that, that they don't get better. I do find that really without fail.
Thank you. Again, I hope somebody heard that today and really takes that with them on their journey because, oh my goodness, so important. Thank you. All right, thinking less about food and more about life, that is an opportunity for somebody today, that there is hope behind this can actually be you. This information is not just for somebody else. Like for the person going, I don't see that for me. How do you speak over them?
Well, one of the reasons I named the new book Defeat Your Cravings as opposed to something binge related, which the old book was, it is because I wrote this article for Psychology Today that observed that only 3 or 4% of the population, depending upon what study you look at, meets the criteria for binge eating. But 40% of the population is obese. I'd say 100% of the population at some point eats beyond their own best judgment. And what I'm recommending is a very simple procedure, which it's not invasive. It doesn't require surgery or medication or, anything other than a little bit of thinking work to teach you to make your own rules. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. Make your own rules and follow them. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want the ability to have a stronger stick-to-it muscle? And it applies to so many other areas of life and so many other disciplines. So you could adopt the philosophy of most Americans and, have a 40% chance of obesity and all the increase in diet reversible diseases or diet preventable diseases that has, or, you could take some simple steps and teach yourself to defeat your cravings and eat within your own best judgment. That's what I say.
Okay, so tell us how your book is laid out, because you, as a professional, I feel like do a bit of coaching. You're good about bringing the patient along on the journey where they are setting their own best interests. Is your book laid out like this as well?
It is. It tells my story in a little more detail to start with. And then it's a step-by-step procedure that, first talks about how you select a rule and what people's common objections are. And then what do you do to slow down the moment that you recognize this part of you is talking that wants you to break the rule? And then how do you disempower that part? And how do you disempower the false emergencies? And talks about the science of cravings and the very specific and practical implications. So it's a step-by-step procedure to take you from feeling a little out of control or unable to really defeat your cravings, not being bothered by most of them within 30 days or so. So that's what it is.
You are empowering and giving the game plan on how to empower one's journey.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I put that all in the book, and it's not necessary that you purchase coaching along with the book. It's all in the book. We do have coaching available because people want it. And sometimes we can help people to do it faster, stronger, better, but it's not necessary. And, most people get better by just reading the book and doing what they need to do.
So if a listener's going, yes, please, this sounds so interesting, I'm excited to know more, can you send them, where's the best place to find you, to find the book?
Defeatyourcravings.com. Defeatyourcravings.com. You'll get everything about me and the book and the coaching programs. And if you click on the big blue free reader bonus button and sign up for that, you'll get not only a link to where you can find the book, but you'll also get a set of free recorded coaching sessions so you can hear what it's like to implement this in practice, because it's kind of hard to jam it into a 30-minute interview. You'll get a set of food plan starter templates for any dietary philosophy. So, whether you're a whole foods, plant-based person like I am, or ketogenic, or low carb, high carb, point counting, calorie counting, there's a set of food plan starter templates that you can use as stimulation to come up with your own rules, and a wide variety of other things like, free little recordings to help talk you through a craving, and recover if you make a mistake. And it's all at defeatyourcravings.com. Click the big blue button.
Hey, fabulous. And what am I not asking you, Glenn, that you're like, you really need to know this?
I think you did a good job of asking me what we needed to talk about. Jim Rohn said that a life of discipline is better than a life of regret. And Peter McWilliams said, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And those are both very consistent with this philosophy. This will help you to pick a discipline that you want to adopt, that you want to make part of your character, because you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything that you want, and help you to go in that direction. So
thank you. Thank you for so many amazing takeaways today. We really appreciate your time, your
thank you.
wisdom. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.